I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus I was evil. Take things and break things and Jesus I was evil. I never shook baby.
Bastards get artsy. We're talking all kinds of highfalutin, posh topics today.
Well, Me Too's back.
Yeah.
More like, hey, hold on.
Huh?
More like Me 3. Me Too, Me
Point
Too
oh.
3. Yeah, that's it. Me 2.0. You did it. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Me 2.0. Electric Boogaloo.
No.
So, what's that reference? Well, we'll tell you. In the art world, on ArtNet, of course you fucking follow ArtNet. Literally, so it's called ArtNet. I've never seen this before. Have you used this site before for the pod?
Probably at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is a article from yesterday, 2 days ago.
Yeah.
By Holly Black. Something Holly Black. And I mean, do you want to introduce it? You sent it. You found it.
Yeah. So this article, artists and protesters tag Gustave Courbet's Origin of the World with the words "Me Too." So yeah, Gustave. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce French. Actually, yeah, I will. I think I will. Gustave
Courbet.
Courbet's infamous nude painting "L'origine du monde," which stands for The Origin of the World, was targeted over the weekend by protesters who tagged it with the words "Me Too." I thought you and I killed the Me Too movement. I thought we kind of exposed.
Oh, I get it. It's a vagina.
Yeah.
So like Origin of the World. Oh, that's actually sweet.
Yeah.
I didn't. I guess I missed the title of it and thought the more on the nose things that they're Me Tooing a painting of a. It's not. It's a crotch to put it bluntly.
It's an exposed vagina. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exposed crotch. It's really well done if you can look past the paint.
Yeah.
From the Me Too, from the tagging. Okay, that makes more sense. I didn't even bother to look at the title, but yeah, it's at a museum in Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I mean, like the fact that it's called Origin of the World, like it seems like that would be like more of a pro-feminist thing, where it's like
it's extremely feminist.
Gave birth to humans,
yes.
Like gave birth to humanity. Like you think that would be like a feminist thing?
Well, that's in the article. They say it's like this was considered very feminist instead of what was the? I mean, think about the alternative to this: the religious. The Christian religious, I guess it's not just Christian, but I suppose Jewish and Muslim also, belief of the origin of the world. There's the origin of humanity, I think is what they're going for more here, is that Eve was birthed from the rib of Adam. Not very feminist.
Right.
But this is extremely feminist and actually really beautiful. I think there's something really beautiful about the bare nakedness of humanity.
Right.
And yeah, and keep setting it up because I'm already kind of jumping ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. So I'm actually I'm looking at an Art News article about it. I think I forgot to look at the one that I sent you. But
oh, okay. Well, anyway, so I'll just I mean it's probably the same thing, but basically these two, and this is what pisses me off so much is because I'm like I've always said, I don't really believe in the death penalty, but people like this should be sent straight to the guillotine. I think specifically because they're in France.
Yeah, no, I agree. The capital punishment should return for people like this in the most like kind of barbaric, outdated, and historically relevant way, I think, too. Yeah.
Publicly.
Publicly.
And like I'm talking like tomato and cabbage throwing. Publicly, like, get real medieval.
Yeah, be sure to stop by your local farmer's market before this execution.
People missing teeth, just the peasantry. Launching expired produce at these sorts of people. But in all seriousness, like these people especially piss me off because it's not, again, I'm not giving any credence or credit whatsoever to people because most of this has been done by environmentalists, right? And Extinction Rebellion or whatever it is. Yeah. Also, straight to the gallows, whatever. But at least they are an activist for a cause that they believe in. Right? These people, and it says it in here, are just performance artists because they're too untalented and fucking losers to have any sort of notoriety or to like matter at all. They have to resort to things like defacing other works of art, and they've also been arrested and charged with things like standing nude in front of a Christian pilgrimage site of the Virgin Mary, I think somewhere in France. Like shit like that, where it's like they're so talentless that they can't actually produce or create anything of value that they have to take away from other people's experiences.
I will say though that the main artist who vandalized this painting and has done similar things, like you said, of like posing nude in front of in public in front of other famous artworks. I will say that she's quite attractive. So
well, I take it all back then.
Yeah, I know. Like, so if she wasn't, I would absolutely condemn. No, but in all seriousness, I mean, she's pretty hot. But like in all seriousness, no, like it's just crass. Like this isn't. It just makes.
Hold
you
on,
think
I'm still the verdict's still out here. I'm still checking. Shit well, she's here with this fucking ketchup bottle. She's very French looking, which I'm a big Léa Seydoux fan, so that's not a knock. Really Gaulish. She's a French 6, I think. Maybe 6.5. Not good. Like Sydney Sweetie could get away with this. This person can't.
I'm saying, like, compared to most feminists, she's not like the chubby purple-haired.
True. Yes. At least, because she's French.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
right. At least the French, even their crit activists still like look good.
They still have some like aesthetic qualities to them.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it just makes you think of like a runner in a race and like tripping someone who's beating them, where it's just like you don't have like the talent.
I would say not even, because at least you have to be close to someone.
That's true. Yeah.
Tripping. This is more like shooting them with a sniper rifle.
Yeah. No, that's a better analogy.
So yeah, her name is. I guess it's in
Deborah De Robertis.
Yeah, probably Roberti. Yeah. She's just a fucking loser. Like, and there's another one with her too. I think they stole something also. Someone else, because here they MeToo'd something else. But it's like, first of all, I know that Europe is just kind of behind on everything. Like they used to be ahead of us and everything, and now they're just kind of behind on everything. Like, dude, MeToo died with the Johnny Depp trial. Like, MeToo's been dead. And it was a complete failure. Oh, I mean, Harvey Weinstein just got his conviction overturned or something like that. MeToo fucking failed. They couldn't even get their white whale. It did. I think it brought some true monsters to light, of course.
Sure.
But it was way more French Revolution. Ironic here. Just started lopping off each other's heads. Every they really started just going after everyone. Cannibalistic is what I'm trying to say. Whatever that image is of the snake eating the tail. Yes, that. So it was a complete failure. Really did more harm than good. Destroyed the concept of due process. It doesn't mean, like I've said, I'm not just doing throat clearing here. It doesn't mean that legit monsters were taken into account, but I think in everyday life, it ruined countless people's lives. It was just pure accusations, and I know this term was thrown around, but in many cases it was just a witch hunt. But I guess, I don't know, warlock hunt or whatever you want to call it. Like
right.
So
absolutely. I mean, and it was absolutely cannibalistic. I don't remember exactly which year. It was definitely pre-2020, but like pre-pandemic. But the California. It might have been even like in LA. There was gonna be a huge women's march, but it was canceled because it was too white. So it's like, that's
what every progressive group. I mean, I just listen to Blocked and Reported, to be honest. There's almost a pattern here with, like, they did this great episode on a Philadelphia cafe where everyone's just trying to out pronoun each other and out oppression Olympics each other, and then just get shut down because no one wants to work. And it's that time and again, every NGO, every nonprofit, every publication, huge podcasts. What was it? Reply All, which was like a super popular podcast. That was a combination of just progressive crit left-wing grievances that just shut down the whole podcast. It's the same thing. And so every single left-wing issue becomes about every left-wing issue. That's why you have trans flags at Palestinian rallies, even though those are antithesis, those are anathema to each other. But that's what happens. You have Greta Thunberg at a Palestinian thing, even though she's an environmental, it doesn't make, it's because it's just, that's the thing to do. And it's substance-less and honestly entertaining though.
Yeah.
So
I
yes,
mean, we wouldn't exist without so many. As much as,
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like they always follow the same pattern. Like it gains some steam,
Always.
and maybe there are times where it's like at the very beginning, it's like, oh, like they're actually responding to something legitimate.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm pro environment, like, yeah, and it's like, okay, but then you guys brought in intersectionality to environmentalism, and now it's climate justice, and it's like, okay, you ruined so much. The Me Too movement, yeah, okay, yeah, there are some powerful men that have historically been abusing women, yeah, sure, bring them down. I absolutely agree. It's like, okay, but now a lot of young guys are afraid to just even walk up to a girl and say hi, how's it going? So thanks, you fucked up dating.
Well, also, and it also just like because there have always been laws in place to protect women. I literally practice domestic violence law. I'm in no way minimizing the very real threat and violence that women face at the hands of men. Well, I mean, I do domestic violence, so there's always a dating relationship. At least it's usually couples and married couples, but even random, of course, absolutely, women are by far more victims of that kind of random violence and violence at the hands of their partners. However, that's not what this was about. This was because there have always been laws in place, and they've gotten better and stronger. Doesn't mean there haven't been steps backwards. There used to be like a whole concept, you can't rape your wife, which is insane. That used to exist in this country. But that's not what this was about. This was just about accusations of things that happened years and years ago. It was all about attention grabbing. It was all about, it was even lots of these women at the time were saying, 12 years ago this happened. It was consensual, but I feel bad about it now. Take him down. That's what it was about, because there is a genuine what's the term I'm looking for, value, I guess, to victimhood now. I think some of that's changing. I hope it's still going in that direction, but that was the crux of the Me Too movement, which is a shame, because I think legitimate grievances, and then look at that. If you look at Rose McGowan here, who was a big proponent of this, right? Yeah. She was saying, during Trump, it was all kind of one-sided. And then when Biden got nominated, it was like, well, wait a minute, he has accusations too. Like, you guys, this is about violent men, not about Republicans, and that got lost. And a lot of them actually did take down a lot of other liberal. I mean, the biggest target, mostly this was like liberal white men who were getting targeted here. So anyway, I do want to read actually some of this, because this is a really good article. Can I read some paragraphs here? So we said her name, and I talked about that. So she organized, I'll say De Robertis, I don't feel like pronouncing the French way, organized the action as part of a performance work called You Don't Separate the Woman from the Artist. The title is an apparent nod to ongoing debates surrounding whether art can be appreciated regardless of the ill actions of the creator, specifically men who are abusive towards women. So we could not disagree more with her on that. We've done, I think, entire episodes about separating the art from the artist. Honestly, for humanity's sake, for culture's sake, for civilization's sake. So the artist told the AFP, I don't know who that is, the actions were a feminist performance carried out because the very closed world of contemporary art has remained largely silent until now. No, it hasn't. In a statement shared via text message and available on her blog, De Robertis denounced the behavior of men described as predators in the art world, citing the art critic and curator Bernard Marcadet, who organized the Centre Pompidou Metz exhibition. Marcadet didn't respond. Here's some. There's list some other defacements or whatever they did with their acts of whatever bullshit they're pulling. They were arrested by security guards while chanting Me Too. I'm assuming in French, but maybe not. They actually wrote it in English. That's just the power of English too. Even the French, who are the most proud of their language than any people group out there, maybe besides the Japanese, do their crit defacing in English. So,
well, I wonder if French is just hard to hashtag. Like there are so many accents, it gets all muddled.
It would be like a hashtag moi si, I guess. I guess there's some ring to it. With all due respect, so here someone's responding. With all due respect to feminist movements, we are shocked to see the vandalization of works by artists, particularly feminist artists, who are at the heart of struggles in the history of art, said Chiara Parisi, director of the Centre Pompidou Metz. We condemn acts of vandalism against artworks conserved and presented in museums, which also target the frontline staff. They list some other works that they target. Also, the avant-garde. There you go. That could be a transition. The avant-garde Austrian artist released a statement on social media on Tuesday denouncing the destruction of the work. So here you have an avant-garde artist denouncing this because it always comes back to you, right? Even the avant-garde, you will not be spared. This is a good quote too. You don't mind if I read it?
Yeah.
Every work of art has its own language, a language that artists give their works of art. Okay. Kind of redundant. Export said it's an autonomous language that cannot be interfered with without the consent of the artist. If this autonomous language is violated by an intervention not authorized by the artist, it is an unauthorized intervention and the autonomy of the artwork is destroyed. This person speaks very wordy, but you see what they're saying.
Yeah. Can I read the quote from the stupid feminist lady?
Yeah.
So she wrote, I call on all women with or without vulvas.
There you go. And for that reason, I'm out.
Exactly. Fuck, I thought it was included in this. All intersex, trans, and non-binary people, and all underrepresented people, whether artists, assistants, or interns in the art world, to dare to express yourself. In the Western world, it's not too hard to express yourself. If you have a smartphone, if you have a pen and pencil, you can express yourself. Like if you have a mouth, you can express yourself.
I mean, but this is exactly what we were talking about. As like, I didn't even put this together when I first read this, but because I didn't know what we were going to say earlier. But this is the same thing that we were just saying. There are radical, what's the term I'm looking for? Gender critical feminists. There are a lot of them who used to be very extreme feminists. These were the people, the Meghan Murphys of the world, the burn your bra feminists. But this was about women, right? That's not who this is. And I could have guaranteed you that if I was given, the two red buttons about who to pick, this was going to be not the feminist who's like concerned about men with men with beards and cocks standing, flashing women in the women's locker room. This is going to be someone like this who's putting it all together. I call on all women with or without vulvas, all intersex, and all underrepresented people. See, if she keeps going, it's going to go. Soon it's going to be like in the Palestinians and the indigenous, non-binary, trans sex workers. Like it was going to
people suffering from climate injustice.
Exactly. That's the thing. And that's exactly who these kind of people are. This is not even the radical feminists who you can have a conversation with, who actually have legitimate gripes, especially back in the day, but even still have legitimate gripes who but this is the same kind of like cumulative crits, I think we should call them. Like just everything, put it all in the pot. It's the intersectional oppression Olympic crit class that is the kind of people who deface 200-year work of arts.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, man. But this is funny. This cracks me up, and they're doing nothing. I don't know who they intend to win over by doing shit like this. Like a sane, reasonable person to be like, I'm so glad that you ruined this, this pillar of my culture. Do you have any pamphlets?
I don't
want some reading material on.
I don't think it's about winning people over. I don't know. I go back and forth with this, honestly, but I think the left wing, the far left, is not about winning people over. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about exclusivity. It's about how far you can go, who can say the most progressive thing, who can undertake the most progressive act. It's about shibboleths. It's about word. It's about mind control and word policing, speech policing. So it's about getting clapter or hosannas from your tribe. That's all it is. It's not about actually winning people over to your side, because they're just, I can't imagine that it is that way. I think a lot of these people live in cloistered areas. They don't actually communicate with anyone who disagrees with them.
Yep.
If they do, they have a conniption. So it's not. I mean, I see the same thing about the protests going on now. Like, how is blocking people getting to their flights for something they have no control over, like global warming or like Israel bombing, like how is not letting them get to their work or see their children or whatever it is going to win them over? And the answer is I don't think it is.
Right.
I think it's about impressing. I think at one level it's about impressing people who already agree with you, and you're the most like radical person. And at an even I think at an even more kind of debased biological ape level, it's about having sex. I really do. I think even though less people don't have sex, it's about like getting laid. It's about attraction. Yeah. Like they just want to attract, whether that's other non-binaries or whatever it is. It's about attracting other people. Maybe it doesn't lead to sex, but it's about attracting other people who already are on your side. It's not about like winning over numbers to flip a congressional seat or anything like that, or to convince the president to stop, to have an executive order or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. At least about like the it's not about winning people over thing. Like there was someone who I saw someone post on Instagram, and there's some crazy radical activist type, and they were criticizing people who, like, regular people who were like who brought up a similar concern that we just brought up, which is like, hey, like you're blocking traffic for a cause that's halfway around the world. All you're doing is pissing people off. But then this activist responded with like, yeah, but if the deaths of innocent children isn't getting you angry, but blocking traffic is, it's like, yeah, dude, every day like there's an atrocity going on around the world. Some people got to pay rent, dude. Like
it's a false equivalent, and I would love to see what happens when if a bunch of, I mean, I've criticized right-wing people too. If they take over streets, or like up in Canada or whatever, I supported the cause for the truckers, but I disagreed with blaring your horns all night and stopping traffic and all of that, of course. And guess what? They were very unpopular. Right. They were popular to a contingent of people, but as a democracy like Canada, they were very unpopular in Canada. And because people don't like being inconvenienced for shit. And that actually had a much closer connection to the government. They went to Ottawa, right? Like what I always tell these activists is go to fucking K Street. Like go protest the weapons manufacturing lobby on K Street in DC. What is doing it at, stopping people from getting to Chicago O'Hare gonna do? So no, like, people say that shit all the time, and they're dumb because they're like activists now. Activist should be a slur, basically. Like
I'm so glad you agree. When I was a kid, whenever I heard the term activist, I'm like, oh man, this person's cool. They're fighting the power. They're risking their reputation and their jobs to go stick up for the little guy. But I was just like, whenever I see people gluing themselves to a street, gluing their hands to the street, it looks so like enticing to be like, man, I want to rip that person right off the fucking pavement. Like it looks so much fun. Like,
activists seem so, and again, I think activist has a connotation of left wing for obvious reasons, but there are right wing activists I find super cringe too, like anti-abortion activists. And I like they never make. So let's do that example, because that is a good example where I think there's you want to say, okay, children. Well, people who are anti-abortion do believe you're murdering children, right? In this country. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, they are right, depending on when that abortion is taking place, in my opinion. But that's a much more nuanced conversation, and does actually have to do with like, who's your governor, what's your legislature, who you're voting for, those sorts of things. It's going on here. And what if so my question to that activist, wherever the fuck they work, what if a bunch of anti-abortion activists blocked you on your way to go like catch your flight to see your dying mom or something across the country, or stopped you from even getting to work, or just stopped you from like, or just were a nuisance for something that not only do you like not agree with, but I'm sure on like the complete opposite spectrum of, like, would you have the same feeling? It's like, oh, well, they're killing babies. Like, in our states where you live and where I live, I very much like you are murdering children if you're having an abortion at 9 months, at 8 months, which you can in our states. I don't know how often it happens, but you can. Now, whether that's justified or not, whether, that's a whole different conversation. But to some people, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if it's at 8 months or 9 months. It doesn't matter if it's at conception. And that's their beliefs. So the standard has to be, no, it's wrong to block traffic, to inconvenience other people. And especially what I can't stand about these people is that they want to play activist, they want to play revolutionary, but then not deal with the consequences. Right. I don't know where that's so typical of this activist class, because it used to be. I was looking up Thoreau recently. I was researching him about civil disobedience, and Thoreau gladly went to jail to not pay his taxes. Someone paid for him, and he was pissed about it. Someone went, I think it was his mother-in-law or someone went and paid his taxes for him. He was like, no, God damn it, I'm trying to make a point here. and Martin Luther King Jr., his letters were letters from a Birmingham jail, not letters from, my studio in Brooklyn. Yeah. Like that was the point. It was, you do civil disobedience and also deal with the consequences of those, because you believe more in what your cause than going to jail and facing, the law. And hopefully whatever your act is overwhelming enough, is convincing enough to get people to vote, because that's how we operate in this country, against it, and to change those laws and to pressure politicians by looking good, right? And that's, and that whole concept of, look at all these college kids who are being arrested at protests, who are not just being arrested for free speech. I hate that when people are like, no, where's the free speech crowd now? It's like, no, they're blocking people from getting to class. They're taking over spaces that they don't have a right to take over. There are spaces for protesting, and that's great and fine. You should be able to do that. But you can't impede other people from protesting. You can say vile shit if you want, but also there are not speech codes anymore at these colleges, but there are codes of ethics that I'm sure they're all breaking. Yeah. And whether I believe in them or not, fine. But if you're intimidating people, if they're letting people onto campus who are not allowed to be there, like that, like I went to a small liberal arts school. You had to sign in people. That campus safety would hunt you down if they knew that there was someone here who hasn't signed in. And meanwhile, you just have Palestinian activists in New York going to Columbia, where they have no right to be there. Columbia is a private institution. Yeah. So I just really I would have so much more respect for these people if at least they dealt with the consequences of it, and they wouldn't cry about what's going to happen to them, because that would show me at least you really truly believe in your cause, and you're not just playing revolutionary at the end of the year because you're bored and have nothing better to do with your life.
So it's a crazy coincidence that you brought up the letters from a Birmingham jail thing, because I was just watching a video on YouTube about the FBI's role in the assassination of MLK. So it showed clips of MLK, preaching to his supporters and followers, about being nonviolent, but it wasn't just about what ended up happening was that a lot of those protests, the nonviolent protests, which ended up being where the police were being extremely violent towards nonviolent protesters. Sure. A lot of that was caught on video and was filmed and was broadcast, and so it actually shined a huge spotlight on that. Of hey, look what the police are doing to these peaceful protesters. MLK went to jail a whole bunch of times, as well as so many of his followers. So it's like they shouldn't be in jail for just demanding equal rights. It made them look better. Because they accepted the consequences of we're being nonviolent and we're still being treated like this. So they got a huge amount of support. But yeah, you're right. This is a bunch of entitled rich kids, acting like assholes and then crying when they get arrested by campus security. So it's
if you're gonna play revolutionary, you got to go in whole hog. It's also about going hungry because you're barricading yourself in somewhere. You don't get airdrops of Taco Bell because you want to take over a building. You want to deal and what's hilarious is that they basically kidnapped or false imprisoned, I should say, a bunch of janitors who, of course, at Columbia are Latino guys from the Bronx, who then you have rich white kids for the, like one of them literally, it was like the perfect embodiment of it. It was like they identified the kid. He was some trust fund kid with $1 million brownstone in Brooklyn, wearing the keffiyeh and everything, and he's battling with some a janitor from the Bronx, or I don't know where he was from, like a probably Afro-Caribbean or Latino janitor from the Bronx or New York City, and it's just like the epitome of this this kind of a conflict that's going on. And I think to their credit, which is great, the union that represents the custodial staff at Columbia is taking action against the school. It's like, what the hell are you doing? You're putting our union members at risk for what? Like you didn't help them at all. And I mean, if anything, I've just become so much like I care way more about what's going over here than in any other country. And I've just become so less supportive of anything that these people support. I mean, Dave Smith, who's very pro-Palestinian, big libertarian, who's really against Israel. And again, he's a Jewish guy from Brooklyn. And I actually have a lot of disagreements with him on this, just from a geopolitical standpoint. But even he's like, I wish that this cause didn't have the absolute worst, supporters behind it. Like the worst comes to light, and it just, all it does is repel maybe people on the fence, people who aren't really sure, people who this is the first they're hearing about this because they have other things going on in their lives. And he's like, man, it would just be so nice if the worst people in America also didn't support this cause.
Seriously, man, if you're like, oh, I want to look into this, like what's going on with the pro-Palestinian movement, and then you see a bunch of intersectional wealthy intersectional jackasses being destructive and harassing. It's like, okay, no, I'm gonna close out of that tab.
Are you seeing any of it personally? You're not close. I always think UCLA, the Rose Bowl's in Pasadena, but UCLA's in like West Hollywood or West LA.
West LA,
right?
I haven't seen it, no. But yeah, West LA though is there are a lot of Jews there, so I'm curious about what like the concept, like what the conflict is like there, like if it's spilling out outside of campus. And
you didn't see?
I mean, I like it, not personally.
No, but I mean, you didn't see like on Twitter and shit? Dude,
I've seen on Twitter,
Like UCLA is one of the few places where there were like battles.
Yeah.
Like in most schools, in some there are like some frat guys fighting back, with I think it's hilarious. And there is some pushback, but it's mostly the police against the protesters. In UCLA, there were like groups of Jewish counter protesters, and there were clashes. It was one of the only schools that I've seen. So I mean, maybe that's it. The people who also, like me, believe that Israel has a right to exist are fighting back against the protesters. Right. So which is always great. Always healthy. These things never end poorly.
But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the current class of activists, especially when they're getting in the way of my right to look at shitty avant-garde art.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't. I mean, this was a nice, like classic or Renaissance. When was this from?
This is 1800s.
Whatever that period is. But do you want to discuss the avant-garde piece?
Yeah, well, and it's funny because like this was actually unintentional. Gustave Courbet was considered an avant-garde artist of his time, and so that showed up again in this other article from ArtNet. This is from ArtNet as well. It's called Art Bites: How Avant-Garde Became an Art Term. I thought this was actually pretty interesting. I thought this was kind of like a fun little, segment or something that we can do, or talk about something interesting. So anyway, I'll just read the opening paragraph here. The term avant-garde describes movements, artists, and artworks that challenge the status quo. Often seen as merely provocative and controversial in their day, they retrospectively come to be understood as revolutionary, cornerstones in the development of art as we know it. The term is borrowed from French, where it originally referred to the vanguard of an army, a reconnaissance party that scouts what lies ahead. How then did a military metaphor become applicable to art? That's pretty interesting, where it's like it's about being like forward thinking. It's about like looking ahead and
being ahead of everyone else.
Yeah. I was like, oh, well, yeah, then that makes sense. So I thought that was actually pretty interesting. But Courbet was considered an avant-garde artist because at the time, this is in the
strong pussies on.
Yeah, exactly. So no, we're only supposed to be drawing dicks, and it's like, nope.
Yeah.
No, but
what is that? Never seen such a thing. Oh my.
But Courbet was considered an avant-garde artist for his time because so this is like in the middle of the Romantic era, so roughly like mid 1800s. At the time, the Romantic era was like like these lofty ideals, these big, grand, passionate things, and then he was painting like more common, everyday, realistic scenarios, such as pussies hanging out, I guess, out in the open. But the term's initial use in the arts is credited to the 19th century theorist Henri de Saint-Simon, a forefather of utopian socialism. He wrote, "We artists will serve you as an avant-garde. The power of the arts is most immediate. When we want to spread new ideas, we inscribe them on marble or canvas. What a magnificent destiny for the arts is that of exercising a positive power over society." In his view, scientists, industrialists, and artists were at the cutting edge, ushering new eras of thought and culture.
Well, when I hear avant-garde, avant-garde is just the art form of activists.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, but it is interesting where it seems like so much of avant-garde art doesn't become appreciated until well after its time. At least it doesn't become appreciated by the masses until after its time.
So what's a more contemporary version? It's like Warhol avant-garde?
I guess so. I would probably consider him.
Which is weird. He was like a pretty conservative guy, right?
Yeah,
like politically, he like met the Pope and everything. He was like very, that Warhol.
Was that later in his life though, when he became more conservative? Or was he like that in the 60s, in the swing in the 60s?
Okay. So like conservative, it's relative. Like he wasn't conservative, like trad wife in the country. He was conservative in like, I'm sure that he was having. I don't want to say I'm sure because I don't know, but a lot of these artists, he had what was the studio, the loft thing he had?
Yeah.
I'm sure they were having lots of wild sex and doing drugs and stuff. So I mean, conservative, like more politically.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. Maybe I always thought he was more of a conservative artist, not doing he did like Americana stuff too, like the Campbell soup can and Marilyn Monroe and the Brillo box. Like to me, as far as art goes, like that's pretty conservative.
Yeah, but he also did. Have you seen any of his films? Because there's one where it's like 8 hours of a guy sleeping or something. It's like an 8-hour long. He did a lot of stuff like that, where it's just like these really long.
And I don't want to ascribe politics to everything. That's not. But I mean, like he wasn't. He was shot by a radical feminist, actually. What's her name?
It wasn't Gloria Steinem, right?
No, that'd be hilarious if Gloria Steinem shot Andy. No, oh my God, I use her name in my book too. Valerie Solanas. Valerie Solanas, that was it. Who's actually from Mentor, New Jersey, which is right, not far from me. Well. I mean, I'm not very proud of her either, but yeah, she shot Andy Warhol. I don't remember why. What's her name? Plays her in a American Horror Story, I think. Girls.
Oh, Lena Dunham.
Lena Dunham, yeah, I think Lena Dunham plays Valerie Solanas. Yeah, in my book, the radical feminists are called the Solanas sisters. So, where was I going with this? So, okay, so what's like a contemporary version or more contemporary version of avant-garde that was not appreciated in its time that now is? Cubism?
I guess so. I mean, and then you had like the postmodern. I don't know. Would Rothko be considered avant-garde?
Would they not appreciate it in their time?
Well, the CIA helped with that. So
we did that last time. It's true. I don't know. I don't know the answer to this, but maybe I think Cubism was very which I love. It's one of my favorite forms of art.
There was Piss Christ in the late 80s.
Yeah, Piss Christ. That, but like, Piss Christ was immediately, obviously, extremely controversial. Yeah. I mean, Piss Christ is literally, I think it's the first case we read in my First Amendment class in law school. It's like the first one. Right. So I don't, which, I mean, I say this as someone who's definitely offended by that, but just facially, just prima facie looking at it, I do think it's beautiful. I think it looks nice when you don't know it's in piss.
Yeah,
But like
yeah,
that's all I'm saying. I
yeah,
don't like that. Like,
yeah.
of course you can make it. You know, you can
Sure.
make whatever you want. I think it's fucking lame. It's another one that's like, okay, do put the Quran in piss, and then see. I like it. Oh, you can always piss off the Christian, sure.
It's very kind of like
It's
basic, like, oh look, we're being offensive, we're being edgy.
yeah, and apparently he was a Christian and saying like, oh, it's the ultimate humiliation. That's part of whatever you want to do. Fine,
Sure.
you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But so it's immediately controversial. Is Piss Christ more appreciated now?
I don't know if it's appreciated, but it's still,
Yeah.
I think, like it's still, highly cited as an example of like, avant-garde, or like what's another term, like we call art that like pushes the boundaries,
Like
transgressive, transgressive art. Where it's like it's an example of it. It doesn't
To
mean
me,
that
to me, it's cheap.
yeah,
It's not creative. You're taking the most revered symbol, one of the most revered symbols in the world's largest religion, and putting it in a bodily fluid.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's very impressive. There, you can criticize, like, again, whatever it's in the eye of the beholder, but you're intentionally or unintentionally pissing off a large contingent of people. There are more creative ways to do it.
Right, exactly.
That's all I'm saying. And I never thought that was very creative, even though I think just snapshot of it looks nice.
Yeah, no, it's actually like like the colors, and like it's kind of hazy, and it's like it's actually like a pretty aesthetically interesting piece. But yeah, it is very much like just like a cheap, like low hanging fruit shot. It wasn't like it's kind of like a clever satire or critique of organized religion. It's like, no, I'm gonna just take this holy relic and put it in piss. Yeah. It's like,
so maybe because I do like, to me, that is a good example of avant-garde art, and I think that when I think of avant-garde, that's what I think of. And I basically think like lazy, lowest common denominator to piss off typically like a mainstream conservative establishment group that's like not very creative. And as someone who writes satire, who does like to skewer the establishment, who does like to skewer large groups of people, right? I like to believe I'm more creative with it,
right?
Because mine's in writing, it's not visual art, but like there are more creative ways to do that than just something as simple as that. So I don't know, I'm trying to think of some other examples.
Well, I think avant-garde is also relative though too, because I mean, like when you look at the painting by Courbet in the article, which is called "A Burial at Ormond," it looks pretty like, oh, it's old art. It's just a group of people. It looks like at a funeral or something. It doesn't look avant-garde, like weird, experimental, offensive. But that was considered like, whoa, what's this guy doing? Like I said, the romantic era was like this passionate, very lofty depictions of various scenes, and then this is just like a funeral, and it's like a hazy day, and it's like, whoa, this is what the commoners. So it was considered avant-garde for its time, but now it's pretty tame. It's very tame by today's standards.
So this is the same artist that did the
Origin of the World,
the pussy, yeah. This is really pretty.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that would be considered avant-garde by today's standards, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like it seems like avant-garde is meant to be like a transgression against whatever is considered the status quo of that respective era.
True.
Yeah,
so
for example, like in the 1960s, with Lenny Bruce. He was arrested 4 times for obscenity between 1961 and 1964. Because he made jokes at the time that were more like, up until then, like comedians used more innuendos, but he came right out and was like using more profanity and making jokes about hookers and cocaine and getting drunk. And nowadays, like that stuff is very tame by today's. It's just like a comedian who doesn't swear or make jokes about everyday stuff. It's like, that's like, why would a clean comedian? That's weird.
Yeah, it's kind of like avant-garde today would be like how many freaking statues go up of like the girl standing in front of the bull on Wall Street, or some weird racial or feminist thing. It's like now today avant-garde would be like putting a giant American flag in Central Park or something like that, or doing something like I don't know, having like a blonde white family portrait, some it would just wouldn't putting up any sort of like a new statue of like any president or king or anything like that. Like that's what would be avant-garde now, because that would be going against the grain of the current artistic climate.
Well, I think there's something. I think there is a line between genuine avant-garde and like just work that aims simply to provoke and nothing else.
Sure.
I think
okay.
Avant-garde in its more real sense is like we were talking about, which is like looking towards the future of like what are people not doing right now, and how can I be the first one? And I'm that is a very reductive line of thinking. I doubt most of our great innovators throughout history were sitting there thinking, I want to be the first guy to do this thing. But it's probably more like, what's missing? What am I not seeing? And how can I create the thing that doesn't exist yet? I think genuine like true innovative art comes from someone it comes from having a vision, whereas nowadays it's just sort of like, oh, like most people in positions of power are white, I'm going to do something that's black, blah. And it's just like, okay. Or it's like, people are very religious, I'm going to do something that's anti-religious. Or it's like, okay, that requires no vision whatsoever.
Yeah, right. It would be doing something avant-garde. Do you want to be avant-garde or like maybe not avant-garde, transgressive today would be like drawing a Renaissance painting.
Yeah, exactly.
with like Jesus on the cross and the Virgin Mary, weeping at his feet or something like that. Like that, it just like no explanation, just like as if it was from 1378 or something like that.
Yeah. Composing a symphony versus writing a song about your ex-boyfriend or something.
Exactly. Yeah. But no, I see what you're saying, and I agree with you. Like I would like to believe avant-garde has more substance to it than just transgressive, because I think transgressive is boring and lame.
Yeah.
But yeah, avant-garde, I guess, could be more of. I guess maybe I'm inaccurately equating avant-garde with progressive, as in the politically progressive, not progressive as in just literally ahead in time. Which doesn't at all, like we're saying, doesn't at all mean it doesn't have to mean more liberal or more left wing or anything like that. So
I wonder if avant-garde is sort of like just kind of a catch-all term for any art that kind of goes against the status quo. And there's because I'm like, I've always thought I had in many cases I do have like a more sort of, I guess, quote unquote traditional or conservative approach to taste in art. But every once in a while, like if so like as I mentioned before, like I'm kind of on the periphery of like the immersive horror experimental theater scene in LA, and a good chunk of it is not very good, but every once in a while I'll be like, that was out there, but it was cool. There was something interesting about that. But most of it but I mean, like so many things, like there are a handful of genuine artists and a bunch of crap.
So I guess to give it a definition, is avant-garde more of like, is it something that's ahead of its time that then the status quo catches up to? Or is it something that's always not the status quo? Is it always something that is, well, of course it is by definition that, right? But I mean, so you have the term is always what is not the status quo, which is not the establishment. Yeah. But do we look at it as, well, then that thing becomes the establishment? Or is it always kind of like a subtext, like a sub?
Yeah.
Are you following what I'm saying? I know it's not the most clear.
Yeah. I think I know what you mean. And yeah, because it seems like avant-garde isn't really like ascribed to something until like after the fact. Like so if we're going by like your initial question of like, is it something that that is actually ahead of its time and then society catches up to it?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, like that person was like an actual innovator. They actually helped move culture in that direction. But then there's a lot of I guess quote unquote avant-garde work that just gets forgotten and ignored. And
yeah, I guess it's both. It's well, that thing could be avant-garde in its day, and then the status quo catches up to it, so it's ahead of its time, just like the vanguard. It's avant-garde is ahead of the vanguard and the military. And so that next avant-garde thing is always something new, right? So when that thing gets folded into the mainstream, or the mainstream gets folded into the avant-garde, whatever it is, then there's something else new. Then sometimes it might be even cyclical, because that's just art, fashion. Like fashion might be a good example of it. Like fashion's cyclical. I'm thinking more like theater too.
Mm.
Like Broadway is vast majority big musical pieces. There's not going to be a Broadway show that's going to be like a black box theater. Like it's just not. That's not going to sell. So that's always going to be. But I wouldn't say that's avant-garde. I guess it's just like a different kind of art form. So maybe that's not a good example. Maybe like fashion is it would be an example of this, because some things like I don't know. I'm not really the one who should probably be talking about fashion, but like skinny ties or something. I know that was a big thing. Like so. My personal opinion is like the best fashion for men was like the early 60s. It was Mad Men. I think men looked the best. Everyone wore 3-piece suits. That's what I wear. Thinner ties, not necessarily skinny ties, but thinner ties. And then by the 70s, it was the big wide lapels and baggier. And then by the 80s, you had the power ties, the power suit, power clashing, all of that. Really, I mean, watch Seinfeld. I adore that show. The fashion is awful. It is the worst era for fashion ever. And 2000s not great. I think we got, and then I think by the early 2010s, you kind of hit back because why? Because Mad Men was on TV and people rediscovered that style. And so I guess it goes like that. So I don't know, because if you look at what the hippies were wearing, or maybe kind of precursor to the hippies in the early 60s and the early seasons of Mad Men, they're wearing stuff that maybe people are wearing more in the 70s and late 60s. So
yeah, there's definitely a cyclical element. And actually, a quick side note, in Portlandia, they did like this musical sketch where they were talking about how everyone in Portland dresses like it's the 1990s, and they were kind of like, like the flannel and this and that and all that stuff. And then they did another one, a sequel to it, where it's like everyone dressed like it's the 1890s. So like they're all like lumberjacks, like big beards and flannel, and so it's like,
well, isn't that the whole thing? Like the dream of the 90s is alive in Portland. And then the sequel's like the dream of the 1890s was alive in Portland. Yeah, well, I think, kind of getting back to the thing of like genuine innovation versus just shocking for its own sake. I think I brought up this essay before, but there's an essay written by Eric Weinstein about his war on excellence. And he's talking more about science and tech. And it's not about the arts, but it had a huge influence on my creative thinking. But he outlines like the two main qualities of like what it means to be like a true like sort of genius innovator. And the first one is having the farsightedness needed to deduce the existence of a higher peak. So to create something that's truly avant-garde, where it's like where you're creating something where society is going to have to catch up to you. You have to have a vision. Like it requires actual thought. I don't think that the creator behind Piss Christ was like, this is going to define art for generations. It's like, no, you just became kind of like a weird little blip that people sometimes refer to. People refer to in law school.
Exactly. It wasn't like you influenced, you start a whole movement, and people look back on the pissers. But man, it's art.
Well, I don't know if I have anything else really to say about that. It is a good thought experiment. I would like to look into it more, because I think I have a decent kind of idea of art, like different artists and different periods and styles. I don't always know what came when, and really what I look at pretty much all of it as contemporary, like what I like, and not, I don't have as much, like I love Picasso, call me basic, but I do love Picasso and Monet. Was he the other big cubist, or not Buñuel? Who was the other big cubist? Some of the B. I'm blanking on his name, and I'm saying I like him. But anyway, like I don't know how they were received in their time. I thought they were very popular.
Right.
I do know though that Picasso was extremely poor, and he had to burn some of his pieces to keep warm. So maybe he wasn't at the, or maybe he was just really popular with his circle and those in the art world, but he wasn't. Which is a shame. So many artists are like, well, 40 years after his death, his painting sold for $13 million. It's like, but he died in a pauper's grave, like buried in a pauper's grave, which sucks. Kafka, I mean, a writer I feel terrible about. He had a terrible life, and he's an extremely influential writer. But anyway, on that note, anything else you want to add?
No, that's it.
All right.
this is cool. We'll do some more.
Oh, we can always talk art. Check out our Patreon. We have 4 different tiers, merch at all of them. You can support us that way, and we really appreciate it. You can check out the Reckless Muse publication. That's where the podcast comes from. It's on Medium. And if you're an artist yourself, you're a writer yourself, or I guess other types of artists, you may be a photographer or something. You can publish with us, send it. Joe's the main editor for that, or is the only editor for that. So you can send it his way on Medium. My work appears there too very often. And
hey, if we ever get anything wrong and you're an expert and you want to come on the show, or you just want to come on the show, not even just to correct us, you just want to talk.
Yeah,
we're lonely.
Yes, you can come on. We do have guests on sometimes, sometimes more frequently than others. We'll talk about anything really that's in our wheelhouse, and you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. All right,
Benjamin, stay reckless.
Stay reckless, Joe. Fight the creds, everyone.